Hey, what is up, guys? So today I just want to go over a little bit of like sideboard since that's an official thing now. If you don't know what a sideboard is, it's an additional 12 cards to your main deck and spirit deck that you can swap out in between games in best of threes or best of fives, etc. Basically, if you have a match and it's more than one game, you can use your sideboard to supplement your main deck in order to try to manipulate your matchups a little bit better or have better cards for what might counter your deck in your opponent's deck. So it's 12 cards. It can be filled with spirits, runes, elestrals, etc. And when you take cards from your sideboard and put them into your main deck, you need to swap out one for one. So your main deck will always be 40 cards. Your sideboard will always have 12. So after game one, if you decide to swap some cards, you need to make sure you take three out of your main deck, you take three out of your sideboard and swap them, or four or five or six, however many cards you are swapping in the process, they must be equal. So why do we want a sideboard? So there's a few reasons we want a sideboard. The first is we might want to counter some meta cards or meta gameplay or meta decks that don't quite fit all the matchups we need to and are very specific answers. So if there's an opponent's deck that is super meta and they are searching a ton of cards, then you want Pandora's box. But there's a lot of decks that don't search for cards, so Pandora's box is a dead card in a lot of situations. So kind of finding an answer that way and not having to put Pandora's box in your main deck, but having access to it for game 2 and 3 if that's your opponent's main strategy is a very good idea. So that's one thing you can do with your sideboard. Another thing is you can try to counter your weak matchup. So if you have a deck that's really strong, let's say it's a 55 to 60% win rate competitively against all the other decks in format, it's a very good win rate for a competitive play. If you have a matchup that you're losing 70% of the time or something, you can get cards into your sideboard that go very well against that specific matchup you have trouble with. So you can, okay, I lose game one because my deck has struggle. It just struggles against a deck. All right, let me go get cards that are good against the deck and put it in my main deck now for game 2 and 3 so I have a better chance of winning. So you can use it to counter weak matchups. If opponent's playing aggro, maybe you got some Ambrosias in there, you know? You got to balance it to your weaknesses. And then the other thing is you can do is a little bit more fringe and harder to do is if your deck has a super specific strategy that gets stopped really easily, you can play that strategy game one and then use the 12 cards in your side deck to just swap your deck strategy. So if you have like a 12 or 15 card package in your main deck and that's your win con and it's really easy to stop, so you play game one with it because your opponent is not expecting it, and then you take all that win con out and replace it with your side deck, so you have a different win con. So let's say maybe you go from like a lock control strategy to like full aggro, and you swap in like some Necruff and Sorlets and stuff, and go for an attack aggro strategy when you're just playing super heavy control. That's also a possibility. Just switching your deck archetype so you throw your opponent off. So now your opponent's siding their deck in for a control matchup, and all of a sudden you're now running all these little guys. That's another idea. So what kind of cards do you take out in between matches? So if you have a dead card, so let's like say you're playing Riceros and you're playing against another Thunder deck. Riceros is almost useless because now it's just a 2/4 for one that your opponent can just attack into because they have Thunder as well. So maybe you take Riceros out and replace it with Mustachian. So an example in my Condiment Control deck, my Leonite Sonicore Lock deck that I'm currently running in a community tournament, I have two Mustache in my sideboard. So if I go against a Thunder deck, or a Thunder aggro deck, or a deck that has access to Thunder and aggressive, I can play now my Mustachian as a 1/6 with no water in the deck at all to replace my dead card. So it goes from a 1/4 stall card to now I just have a 1/6 stall card that's stalling based on its body, not its ability. So you can kind of swap cards that are useless because, your tsunamis, your eruptions, they're not good against certain elements, so you can swap them out for something that's going to be providing more use. You can side out cards that are working against you. So if your opponent's playing like a burn strategy and they don't have a board most of the time, your resting on the laurels is useless, or it's almost useless because they have maybe one creature out and you could replace it with something else, or maybe they're playing nothing that has more than 4 attacks, so you don't need all the Necruffs. So cards that are working against you a little bit, you can get rid of them. If you're still playing Eruption, they're playing a red deck or fire deck, your Eruption is now hurting you more to play it than your opponent, so it's working against you in a sense. So you can take those cards out and swap in what you might need for the matchup. And just the last part of this video, some good cards to look at for your sideboard if you're not sure where to start. Pandora's Box is a great one. It's super specific, but really hoses a lot of things that need to use it, like Aeolus, like Shadowmoth decks. Um, if maybe your opponent's going from Blazers to Trifernal, it can hose a lot of stuff like there. Gorgon's Gaze is a great sideboard card just because it's very flexible. A Shield of Achilles, maybe, if you're not running a full 3 set, maybe you want the 3 set because your opponent's playing Ramp. Ambrosia is a good sideboard card if you're not playing super just like Restoration-ish and you're going against an aggro deck. Ambrosia's really good. Um, and then everything else you kind of just want to look at your matchups for. You know, maybe you have extra Sonic Cores in there and your opponent's playing only counter removal, so you side in a Sonic Core or two to stop the removal. You know, it's all kind of up in the air. You kind of need to look at what you're playing against and what your deck's weak to and just manipulate it from there. But other than that, that's the video for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I know it was pretty quick. I wanted to keep it just rolling. Please like, subscribe. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to get that 100. And I'll see you guys next video. Have a good one. Peace.